I literally did it twice because I needed everybody to know how intense this is going to be. We're talking about thesis statements. And I know that you've heard so much about this in your high school career and in your life. And it's probably like, oh my God, I don't want to deal with this. Or I already know what's going on. But I do want to offer a little bit of a different kind of idea about how you should think about thesis statements. Maybe it goes along with what you've heard in the past, but it gives you more freedom to think about thesis statements as something that doesn't really have a formula, but that has some conventions we can follow. So if we were in class, which I wish so badly that we could talk about this in class because it's one of my favorite things, is to ask everybody, what have you heard about thesis statements? And then we break down what is mythical, what sort of has some truth, etc. Um, but we can't do that. We're not in class. So why would we have a thesis statement at all? Why can't we just write however we'd like? Why can't we just put the information in and the reader can figure it out? Well, we could do that. But over time, we've realized that it's better to have a clear expectation for the reader, so that the reader knows what's going on and they can easily follow the writing. So, our book says that a thesis statement serves as a mini abstract for the paper. Notice also that the thesis statements that were examples in the book, they point to the writer's focus and they set up expectations for what the writer will need to do to persuade the audience to accept the thesis. So, in other words, it is really to your benefit to have a thesis statement because if you say are writing an essay about something very controversial and almost cliche like the death penalty, you're not writing about the entire death penalty, everything about it. You're writing about one very specific thing, hopefully. And so your readers are more likely to accept what you're talking about and more likely to understand what you're talking about if you give them a clear idea of exactly what issue with the death penalty that you're talking about. And that will come in the thesis statement. So, I don't know, I kind of like this meme because it's like, this is just nonsense. And we often just think about thesis statements as being this like kind of ridiculous, nonsensical thing. But hopefully we can clear up a little bit of that. So the book tells us that there is no set formula for what a thesis statement should look like. And I hope that if anything, you really internalize this. There's no one way to get that statement out that helps your readers understand. There are two kinds of theses that really kind of help you shape it up if you don't really know what to do. And those are listing theses and generalized theses. And you guys probably have heard of these and use them. They're very common. And a listing one gives you just basically, here are the ideas for your audience that you're going to work through paragraph by paragraph. So it kind of looks like this. Your thesis statement, which comes somewhere in the essay, is going to say, such and such is true or such and such is the case because Y, Z, and A. So in other words, these are the three ideas that you are giving, reasons that you're giving that this is the case. And you're going to work through these throughout your essay in like one is a paragraph, another one is a paragraph, and another so on. But you also have a generalized thesis. You could just have a statement that gives an overall idea or impression that you're going to explain or work through. And it might not be giving these specific reasons. You'll give those later on. So in other words, your thesis statement is going to say, oh, sorry, I hate that. I hate that so much. Let's go here. X in Y situation is Z. It still didn't change it. Okay, that really annoys me. All right, so when we're talking though about essay 2, you still need a kind of thesis statement. You need a place where you're helping the readers understand what this is about, but you're not really persuading them so much. You're giving them an idea of what people thought about your media, but you're not necessarily persuading them that they need to do something or they need to believe something. You're presenting a point of view, you're informing them about something. So, I want to give us an example, and we're going to watch this on this video. There was a YouTube video in which some journalists interviewed people in the sex work industry, the stripping industry.
It was very like Hollywood.
To get their opinions about the movie Hustler. So if you remember, it was a Jennifer Lopez movie that came out a couple of years ago. And this is a perfect example of what you are going to be doing in your interview. So you're interviewing somebody else about how they felt about a piece of media. Well, here's a journalist interviewing people in stripping industry about what they thought about hustlers. So let's watch this. And what I'd like you to do as we watch, I want you to write down what are some of the major things that come out of this interview. What are the themes? What are the common answers or the big ideas that you see emerging from this interview? What, in other words, what do these people think about the movie Hustlers?
Like, I don't know if any of these Hollywood producers like have been to strip clubs before. I thought it was cute.
I thought that it was a really great film.
It's like I liked it because it made me laugh. And a lot of other stripper movies, like Showgirls, show strippers as like this sad wandering soul or like abandoned by their families, whereas Hustlers kind of gave the entertaining light to things.
I thought that they did a really good job at portraying the struggles of New York strippers.
I thought it was cute. It was fun. I can't really say if I like it or I didn't like it though, because it's my life. Like I live what the movie is depicting.
Strippers, we're like it is kind of like a sisterhood, I think. It's like a community, and I think we all got each other's backs.
The dressing room scenes, those are so accurate to what we experience. It's so much laughter, so much joy, really us goofing around together. So I think they did a good job in that. But to call it a stripper movie is pretty reductive. Well, I think halfway through the movie, like stripping wasn't really in it anymore. At that point, it kind of gets more muddled in the lines of full service or escorting.
God, you just reminded me that they actually were doing that shit, weren't they?
So stripping is sex work because you're grinding on dudes' dicks. They just skirted around the whole topic of fucking for money, except for when they depicted some of the girls giving extras and kind of demonized them.
There's a lot of like whorephobia within sex work. They did kind of shame the Russian girls for giving $300 blowjobs.
At a club like Hustlers, if they're like giving blowjobs for 300, that's realistic for a club like that. But for like where I was working, no, like $50.
Were there any lines or moments that really resonated with you?
Yeah, drain the clock, not the cock. That was like my favorite line in the whole movie.
Drain the clock, not the cock. I was like, that's real, and that's something that like new strippers don't learn, I think, for a little bit. So they're like, just trying to get through the lap dance and make it fast. When it's like if you slow it down, you can actually make more money. So I thought that was cool.
That's like great, the greatest advice of all time.
How do you think it represented race and racism in the club?
For a club like Hustlers, it wasn't actually accurate. Again, Hustlers, high-end VIP clubs like that, they are extremely racist. They're extremely sizist. There's no way, even when I was at my youngest and my thinnest, I couldn't even get into the door unless I was like coming with some guy and we were like, coming to like sit and enjoy the show.
Lizzo being represented in the movie, although it's completely unrealistic that she would be a stripper because like I've been asked to be put on a diet before and so many other girls have, but like seeing her in the movie and seeing her on stage and like that energy she brought was awesome.
If they do let a black woman in, she'd be very stereotypical black. She'd probably have to wear blonde hair. She'd have to be fairly thin. And she'd probably be the only black girl that works in the club. But other than that, yeah, it just kind of showed you that there's range. Like, black strippers exist, fat strippers exist, strippers of color exist.
Were there any lines that really stuck out to you as unrealistic?
The very first scenes of the movie was a little unrealistic. Like, no strippers are lining up. It's not like a pageant, we're not like, it's not like that. And no one is clapping at strip clubs.
Hustlers or Showgirls?
Oh, don't get me started.
Oh, Jesus, you kidding?
Showgirls is not real at all. Hustlers.
Showgirls.
Horrible. I love Showgirls so much. Like, that's like iconic stripper movie to me. I do the Nomi Malone.
Okay, so that's just about enough of that. I hope you understand that the purpose of this is because it's just an absolutely perfect example of what you guys are going to be doing. You're going to be interviewing somebody about how they felt about a piece of media. And that's exactly what we got here. So I think what I wanted to say was that if we were having to identify what are the big ideas that they articulated, that can help us come to our thesis statement. So, um, they mentioned, many of these people in the interviews mentioned that how the girls looked, so their size and their race in the movie, was not realistic. You notice them saying that you wouldn't see X kind of person at such a high end club because the reality is that there's sizeism and racism. Um, they also said that there was a lot of shame or fear created around certain acts of sex work as opposed to other acts. And so you notice that as well. And the film did not acknowledge the fluid nature of the work, the way that it changed given different contexts. And also, it blurred the line between stripping and escort work. So you said that, like, it mentioned that you saw people doing stripping at the beginning of the film, but then they sort of morphed into these escorts. And in reality, that is not the same job. Those are different things. So overall, we see that there are these things. It was not necessarily realistic, but at the same time, all of the girls seem to find it entertaining in some way. And so, our thesis statement, a decent thesis statement for this would be right here. And would this be listing or generalized? Well, this is probably generalized. And but then within the actual essay, you would work through each of these three ideas. So here would be what you said as your thesis statement, which comes somewhere near the beginning of the essay. And then throughout, you would work out these things. If you wanted to make it a listing thesis, you could put a semicolon here and say these three things, but maybe broken down a little bit shorter. So, this is just some about how you can start building a thesis statement and the point of a thesis statement for essay 2, but also for other essays.